to episode 5 of Ramblin' Reference.
What happens when two librarians go for a walk?
This episode is Walk 19, Albina Riverfront to Hilltop Loop in the 2005 edition of the Portland Hill Walk book by Lauren Foster.
Hello, Lori.
Hi, Becky.
So you may notice that we're not talking about Alameda Ridge today. It was a really nice walk, but it was more of a nice house walk, and we didn't really find that much to talk about.
We could have said, oh, that was a nice house.
Yeah.
That was a nice house.
Right.
Oh, I like that house.
Yeah, it's like, oh, they're doing work on that house. Oh, they're restoring it. It looks like they're doing a good job. So
It was a really beautiful neighborhood.
Yes.
Definitely do the walk if you can. But
Yes.
okay, so this walk, we walked around the Albina neighborhood. We had a friend with us who lives in the area, and she pointed out some very interesting things that were in the book, some things that have changed in the neighborhood, and just secret little things that she knows. It was the least hilly of our hill walks. The highest point was 200 feet, and even then we were sort of,
Yeah, and it was like in this back alley that we're like, oh, this is the highest point.
One little uphill when we're used to huffing and puffing. So I guess that was a nice break, but yes, not very hilly.
I had thought when I originally was like, oh, we're going around Albina along the Willamette?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I'm like, wait, what river is that? And, there's kind of an embankment down to the river, but that was more in the industrial area, so we didn't really walk around that part. I was like, oh, yeah, we're going to be going down some cliffs, and nope.
No. We're not allowed near the cliffs.
Yeah. So the walk started at North Williams and Russell, and we started the walk after I read the 2-page introduction.
It was a longer introduction than usual, but it had a lot of interesting information.
Yeah, which we will hear about later. And you've been temporarily working in the neighborhood.
Yes,
so
right smack dab where we started our walk. So, and I've been taking lunchtime walks around there, so it was nice to learn more about the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
So, yes, we walked along Russell towards the Willamette. There was very loud freeway noise as we got closer. There's both I-5 and 405 quite near us there, so it was really loud.
Yes.
We noticed that the Widmer Brewery was closed down.
And then,
or at least the restaurant. We weren't sure about the brewery itself.
The brewery still looks like it has like supplies
there was
to make beer inside.
Yeah.
So, but it was really hard for me to hear about the pretzels and not have the option for those.
But there's a lot of breweries closing down in town. Another favorite of mine, Lompoc. Fifth Quadrant. Well, Lompoc is the brewery, and they have a few restaurants around, but the Fifth Quadrant was one I've gone to a lot. So, kind of a bummer.
And it was really a mix of dilapidated and gentrified buildings on Russell. It used to be a stretch of street frequented by dock workers and mill workers and laborers, and the other end of Russell was a ferry slip, so I would imagine a lot of people kind of heading over, and it had 30 saloons, which I guess is a lot.
Whatever the market requires, yes, what it'll take.
The only remaining saloon/tavern from that time is the White Eagle, which used to be, this is the list from the book, an immigrant refuge, Prohibition-era ice cream parlor, hard hat retreat, rock music venue, and then the McMenamin brothers bought it and kind of revived it.
Right. So, I've never been in that one. Have you?
I haven't. I hadn't even been on that stretch of Russell.
Yeah.
One of the buildings that she mentioned in the book, which is from almost 15 years ago, it was still there. Yeah. I was expecting it not to be there because a lot of things have disappeared.
Yes.
But the really weird thing, it was so dilapidated, but then there was like a brand new business sign on it.
And that was weird to tell. Like it was really dilapidated. Like you wouldn't want to step foot in it. But then behind it was sort of a big warehouse attached to it that definitely seemed to be some kind of working business.
Yeah. So I don't know what was up with that.
Maybe it's more expensive for them to tear it down, but I would think the insurance would be so expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that wasn't the one that was the hotel. That was the next one.
It was the next one that was...
Okay.
Like, the wall was bowing out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was scary.
Yes.
It was good for Halloween. Yeah. So then we walked north a bit along Mississippi Avenue. And we saw Fremont Bridge, which is beautiful. It's a steel-tied arch. And I don't even know how to pronounce this.
No. Passerelle Debbie.
Passerelle Debbie. A pedestrian bridge under the Eiffel Tower. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
That was, the bridge was originally thought to, that it was going to connect to the Fremont Street. It does not. And I think you may have missed the information about the bridge because
yes,
I was yelling at this point and still no one could hear me.
There was sort of wind and traffic and everything else. So.
Yeah, it was the actual like North Interstate Road and then I-5 and I-405 traffic.
So we left there pretty quickly. We did not hang out long. And we went up through a neighborhood of ultra-modern and also very old houses. It was kind of this neat little hairpin turn from Mississippi to Cook.
Yeah.
It was a really nice little interesting area. And definitely, yes, there was one very old, modern house.
Yeah.
It wasn't ugly or terrible. I thought it fit in pretty nicely.
Yeah.
It was cool and interesting. We went to one house that the book pointed out that was W.L. Bantam's 1896 Victorian home. It was beautiful. Apparently, the book pointed out that even 15 years ago from that edition, there was a huge park-like lot that surrounded the house.
Yeah.
That was gone. And it was very, very closely surrounded on either side by modern boxy hamster cage homes.
I think all this new architecture just looks like the hamster have-a-trail things from the 70s, just very boxy and.
But I was glad the house was still there because it was pretty and just had sort of those ornate things, Victorian era sort of pretty little
decorations
icing on the cake kind of decorations.
Yeah, so, and then like the fish scale, I think.
Yes, yeah.
Not shingling, but just like the siding. And I had seen the top of the house from behind when we were coming down.
That's right. I remember you pointed it out.
I was like, that's a really odd mix. And then, we got around. It's like, oh, that's because they destroyed lots.
Yes. So we discovered, though, Mississippi Avenue is a pretty trendy, up-and-coming place. There's a lot of cute shops and stores, and it is fun to walk along and window shop and probably go in there, too. And our friend knew of a lot of the backstory of some of the businesses.
Yeah, and Sock Dreams is up,
and Sock
up
Dreams
there now.
Is there, yes.
Yeah.
One of our favorites. So we went down another street and we found a very large old building that had started out as the home for the aged and friendless, which sort of struck us as a bummer.
Yeah, and like, do you get kicked out if you have friends?
Yes.
Like, if your friends show up, they're like, you're out of here.
Stop you at the door.
Right.
Could I find a friend of yours? Yeah. If I do, you're out. So now it seemed to be more like a recovery center for addicts. But it was nice. It was a nice old building and a nice yard. And there was an elm tree, apparently, the book told us, that had been planted in the front yard in 1891, though we weren't sure which tree it was. And then we sort of went round about that and found another monkey puzzle tree, which there have been a few that this book has pointed out to us on our walks, and those are always cool to see. It was planted in 1905 when the trees were introduced from South America in the 1905 World's Fair.
Also known as the Lewis and Clark Expo.
Yes. And we always enjoy hearing more about that. I'm not sure the homeowners enjoyed us standing in their front yard. They came out and kind of looked at us. And But we were pleasant and went on our way.
So the other thing she mentioned in the book about those trees is they have, like the seeds are edible, like pine nuts.
Oh, right. I remember that.
But the trees take so long to grow that it's not like a viable crop.
Yeah.
And they also they have separate male and female.
Yes, that's interesting.
Versions of the tree, and if you don't have both, then the seeds are just empty. They don't have the nuts in them.
Okay.
And then we made our way kind of zigzagging southeast back to the starting point. And the John Palmer house was kind of next to the highest point in the walk. And it's just a lovely old Victorian,
really gorgeous.
Again, with a lot of decorations and
a nice big yard.
Yeah.
A fountain.
And now it's like some sort of private health thing.
We had to call to make an appointment if you wanted to come in. It was gated, and
I was like, make up an excuse, like, oh yeah, my back hurts. Can I come in? And then many things on this leg of the walk just no longer exist. I think pretty much every building that she pointed out, except for one of the churches, just does not exist anymore.
Yep.
One of those things being the Wonder Bread bakery and retail outlet. And I was tickled to learn that Wonder Bread was named in 1921 because the vice president of merchandising development for Wonder Bread went for a hot air balloon ride and was filled with wonder at the sight of all the balloons. And so that's why the logo has all the brightly colored circles or balloons on it, and why it's called Wonder Bread. Which is just, I don't know, it's just really funny.
I can see him telling that story at parties.
Right.
Well, I was up in this balloon and I was filled with wonder, and I thought, why not call my bread that?
And then another thing that was pointed out was the Gladys McCoy Park, which is getting very close to the starting point, and neither of us had really heard of it, but she kind of sounds like she was pretty awesome. She was a county chair, she was a county commissioner, she was a school board member, and just like
there was a long list of things.
Very long list of things.
Yeah, she's a really incredible woman and great member of the community.
Yeah, but there was unfortunately a lot of graffiti on the memorial. And then a couple buildings that we're pretty familiar with. The Matt Dishman Community Center. It's a building that I've seen many times, but I didn't know the history of it. And it used to be called the Knott Street Gym, and apparently was the place to be for boxing between the 50s and the 70s. And the author says it put Portland on the map athletically. And then there's also the power station across the street from that, which is kind of a lovely old brick building.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
And it used to run the main streetcar line and the train up to the top of Council Crest.
And there's still a working power station, too. Yeah. Although I don't know if anything happens in the building outside or all the sort of big electrical equipment things.
Yeah, I don't know, like, how much like work has to be done with modern power stations. They always seem to just have tiny buildings and
so it might just be the building is just sitting there.
Like you plug the computer in and you just sit in a chair and like adjust things. I don't know. So one of the things that I found really interesting on this walk was something that was not actually in the book, but our friend took us on a detour. She said, oh, you have to see the Before I Die wall. And we're like, what is this? So it is at the T intersection of North Borthwick, which I have a hard time saying, and North Prescott. It is large plywood sheets painted with black chalkboard paint, and they are attached to a fence with pre-painted words. Before I die, I want to, with a line after it in white, and you can fill it in. And there's a little bucket of colored chalk that you can use. It had just been cleaned off when we went past, but you could still see the shadow of a lot of what was on there.
Which was cool, yeah.
Some of the things that I noticed were I want to make chocolate. I want to heal from trauma, which was a little sad. I hope that whoever wrote that is on their path to becoming better. I want to get a girlfriend. Again, hopefully on the way to accomplishing that. And I want to return my overdue library book, which was added day of. And so I was just thinking, oh, that's cool. It's a Portland thing. But no, it's actually a global art project.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. It was started in New Orleans by Candy Chang, who had done other civic experiments in public places. A woman that she had really loved and who was like a mother to her died suddenly, and she was just really struggling with grief and depression. When she started to come out of it, she wanted to hold on to that clarity that she got from the time and realized that humans really do not like to talk about death.
Yeah.
And there was an abandoned house a block away from where she lived, and she painted the house with the chalkboard paint and stencil to see if she could help others get that kind of clarity, as well as paying tribute to Joan, who was the woman who passed. It filled up in a day.
Wow.
And over the next few months brought the community together. Today, there are over 5,000 walls in 78 countries and 35 languages. There's a website, beforeidieproject.com, where you can go and read more, and they have like archives from past walls, and they also have like sample messages from boards around the country, and I could not read too many of those because I start to tear up.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's pretty heavy.
And she also published a book. There are instructions on the website for how to build your own. The Portland one listed on the website was in the archive section and was a temporary one at the Waterfront Blues Festival. And I don't know if the people that did that one are the same people that have it on the fence in front of their house.
Yeah, that's cool. And it's just, it's interesting to have that, just a place of giving something to someone in that way without any intervention. The people that lived there probably didn't even know we were there. Mm-hmm. You can just stop by and, write your sort of message in a bottle almost and disappear and maybe get something out. So it's a really amazing idea to me.
Yeah, I was interested to know like how it spread around the world. Did like one person see one wall and make their own, or did she have enough of the community that they were like, oh, this needs to be like a global thing, and they spread it? Or I'm just always interested how things spread like that.
Especially before the internet, because they did. I mean, things spread then too, and there would, somebody might travel and see something somewhere and reproduce it or pass it along, and I like that idea. It is really a community connector, but globally and locally.
Yeah. So what sparked your interest?
So I thought about, again, because I'm working in that neighborhood, that I've learned bits and pieces of the history. I also work at the Albina library sometimes, so I've certainly heard a little bit about it. And then in the book, they also mentioned Vanport, which I've heard a little about. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to sort of look at those communities and learn a little bit more about their history and what happened. And so I'll talk about those. So Albina, which is now a neighborhood in Portland, was first its own city. It was planned in 1872, but by 1891, it was incorporated into Portland, so it became part of Portland, which is sort of Portland's history. A lot of little towns ended up becoming part of the bigger city.
And that happened with Seattle too.
I think. Yeah. And a lot of our walks, we have found that, where it's sort of like a little village out here.
Right. Mount Tabor.
Ends up melting on Mount Tabor, and then Maywood Park, which we learned about last time, which
went
the other way and kept separate, but still is, really a part of Portland.
Yeah.
So at its beginnings, Albina was home to many European immigrants, mostly because of its proximity to the railroad yards and the docks that we saw. So they were working and living there. And drinking in the many saloons that existed. Later in the 1910s, African American Portlanders began living there in higher numbers, mostly because they were redlined out of any other area of Portland. So redlining, if you're not familiar, is a way that real estate developers and community leaders sort of nefariously keep people out of certain sections of the city. So they'll draw a red line around the places where they will or will not rent or sell to people, in this case to Black people, but it could be any kind of people, but mostly Black people have suffered from that.
Today there's also redlining on the internet.
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
Which is, it's just mind-boggling. So you and I both have seen the video about, like, why aren't there more
and I'm going to talk more about that too. Yes.
Okay, because I was wondering, like, in 1910, how
why people would have even come. And that's a big story too, because so yes, I was going to refer to the video, which I recommend anybody listening to this go see. It's available on YouTube, and it's called "Why Aren't There More Black People in Oregon" by Walida Imarisha. And she talks about, in a way, when I was a kid growing up in Oregon, we were made to feel proud that we were not a slave state.
Right.
But the truth is we weren't a slave state because it was illegal for Black people to come to Oregon.
Yes.
It was illegal for African American descendants to live in Oregon. And that was true for many years. Although people still did come and live here before then. Even during the time of the Civil War, some Southerners landowners were fleeing, white Southern landowners, sort of, leaving that area, feeling like they wanted to go west and do something else, were illegally bringing their slaves to Oregon. So there's a few cases of that. But then also, people go where they can. So sometimes people go someplace even though they might not be welcome, and maybe they're brave, maybe they're desperate.
Okay.
Yeah, but I thought about that too. Like, why would you go to a place where people were so clearly cruel or bigoted or racist? And you gotta go somewhere, I guess.
And I guess there's probably a lot of places like that.
Yeah.
So you would have to take your pick, I guess.
Right.
I don't know.
So yes, there were and always have been Black people in Oregon, but not many. And so her talk goes into great detail about that. So yeah, that's why I recommend it. And I know you've seen that too. So the numbers of African American folks, increased in Portland during World War II. Because there was shipbuilding. We had a lot of shipbuilding. So people were working in the shipyards and were encouraged to come to Portland for that work. So a lot of people did migrate from other parts of the country to come live in Oregon and work in those shipyards. So when that was happening, there was no place for anybody to live. There was just simply not housing available, not only because of the redlining situation, and also many of the people who were coming were also of European descent, so it wasn't only African American people. So they quickly threw together not quite a shanty town, but a town of not very well built houses and for the workers to live in, and they called it Vanport, which we also learned from the book. I always heard that term, that name, but it's called Vanport because it's halfway between Vancouver, Washington, and Portland, Oregon.
Do you know where exactly it is? Because
Yeah, it's pretty high up, so it's north of Albina quite a bit. And it's hard because it just sort of has a little pinpoint on the map of sort of a place that they're calling Vanport. And in fact, I looked a lot through a lot of the resources I was looking through to find a map of where it was and what the line around it was, and I couldn't find anything. So I'd probably have to go down to the Historical Society or maybe even the downtown library to see if they have some older maps that would show where it was. Yeah. And it was an integrated community. Many ethnicities lived there. And in fact, with 40,000 people, it was the second largest city in Oregon at that time, which was another thing she pointed out in the book. So Portland was the largest.
Did she? I forgot.
And Vanport, being a separate city, was the second largest city. So 40,000 people.
Wow.
So in 1948, after a particularly rainy period, a dike broke and flooded Vanport. It was completely destroyed, and 16,000 people lost their homes. And that really reminded me of Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, when the levees broke and a lot of people, poor people, were flooded out of their homes.
Yeah, do you know, was it kind of the same scale?
It was not the same scale. But it was similar in that also they were sort of people in charge had been checking the dikes and kept telling the people who lived there, it's fine. Oh, God. Don't worry. They even, I guess, sent out a flyer the day before this happened and said, don't worry, don't get excited, everything's fine. But the other thing I read was it was less devastating as far in terms of human loss as it could have been, because it was a nice day and a lot of people had left to go out and, take a walk or do something or maybe go to church or something. So there weren't as many people home as there could have been. But yes, because it was a burst dike rather than just like a floodwaters, which would, even rising quickly, you might have a better chance. It really did gush into the town. I had a hard time finding out how many people died also. I think at the time there was a bit of trying to cover it up. So there were stories of hundreds of people and stories of no people, dying. And actually the best thing I found, or the closest thing I found, was that 12 people died, but I'm still not sure about that. I looked for quite a while trying to get a number. But yes, so maybe not a huge number of people died, but still 12 people is 12 people.
Yeah.
So everyone was pushed out of their homes. 16,000 people lose their homes. Again, a lot of them are European descendants, so they can kind of go wherever they want.
Right.
A lot of them went back to their former communities. The war was over and the jobs were drying up anyway. Some of them went to other parts of Portland, but the black people that were living there really had very limited places they could go if they were going to stay in Portland. And once you're, ensconced in the community, it's hard to just leave.
Yeah,
your family, your friends, your schools are all there. So a lot of folks did stay, and they moved into Albina, which was the neighborhood we were walking around. And that was also because a lot of white people were moving out of Albina, a sort of white flight to the suburbs kind of thing that was happening after World War II.
Oh, okay.
So there were places opening up for folks to live, although maybe not the nicest places. From what I was reading, they might have been older, more dilapidated homes. But folks moved in and made it a black neighborhood. And in fact, North Williams and Russell, where we started our walk, was the heart of this community, with many black-owned businesses and a thriving nightlife. And just, it seems, I saw a lot of pictures and things that were going on at that time. We've seen some of those, and it just looked like a place people really cared about. And, and it seemed like they were really trying to make it their own. And they did for a while. But over time, the community continued to be pushed aside, not only, through poverty and all the other things that the dominant culture does to people of color, but by things like the I-5 freeway and Veterans Memorial Coliseum were all constructed in the 60s, and those plow right through as we
geez.
saw
Okay.
that neighborhood. And then Emmanuel Hospital, which she also points out in the book,
Yes.
and which I've heard stories before, built on a huge swath of land there in the 70s, and a lot of people lost their homes during that time too. They were just, kicked out.
Well, in the book, she talked about the program or something that the hospital was going to like build housing or something,
right,
and kind of help out all the people that were displaced, but they ran out of money.
Yes.
And when we were over there, the hospital was undergoing like massive renovation and construction. I'm like, well, where did they get the money to do that?
Right.
So,
and they also have large pieces of land that aren't being used. There's several block-sized pieces of land that are sort of covered in grass, and people who are using them. I've seen people, out there with their dogs and their kids, but it's not a park. It's not developed. And I thought, well, why don't they do something with this piece of land that could build low-income housing, or even a park, or there is a park a few blocks away. So I don't know. Yeah.
Huh.
But I know that's, another deeper story, the Emmanuel Hospital stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There was, when that was built in the 70s, there was a lot of contention, and people were kicked out, and then it didn't even really get built till later. So people felt like they lost their homes for no reason. So yes, there's a lot of history in that neighborhood, and it doesn't look good for the white people of Portland. As we've learned. So today, Albina and other neighborhoods of North Portland continue to that fight between gentrification and the people who continue to live there and celebrate their history and heritage. A few resources I would point out that folks might be interested in, where I got a lot of this information, was Oregon Historical Society has a bunch of stuff on their website, and I'm sure at their location as well, pictures and things. There's a video that OPB, Oregon Public Broadcasting, created called Vanport, Oregon Experience, which I saw many years ago but want to see again. I just couldn't get it in time for this. I got a lot of information from the Oregon Encyclopedia, which is online, and Smithsonian Magazine.
Really?
Both online, yeah. And then I found a really great website called OregonBlackPioneer.org, and they have a lot of great information and pictures and tons of information if you want to dive deeper. But it's another thing I learned about, actually, a while back, is the Vanport Mosaic, which is...
What is that?
Yeah, so it's a group of folks. It's an organization. They have a website also. They do things like exhibits, theater work, and they have a lot of great information on their website too, and it's basically celebrating the culture of the people who lived in Vanport and now continue to live in the neighborhoods there. So celebrating African American heritage and culture as they lived in those areas, but through art and understanding and connection and things like that. So I met a couple of young people recently that were at an informational booth that were sort of telling me all about it. So I've been on their mailing list for a while and get things once in a while when they have events and things like that. So I thought that was particularly interesting too. But I didn't sort of put it together, Vanport Mosaic, with sort of this history of Vanport until I started doing this research, and it came up.
And what event did they have a booth at?
It was at the archive crawl.
Oh,
have you ever done that?
Yeah. Okay.
I would highly recommend doing that too for anybody listening.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you just have a little time, go onto their website and you can see all the cool things they're doing at the Vanport Mosaic.
And then the video that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so that's available on YouTube.
Yeah, and I need to rewatch that.
Yeah, I think it's worth rewatching from time to time.
Yeah, I forget things, and it's good to be reminded.
Yes.
On a regular basis.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Well, that's a lot of food for thought.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a good walk. It was really interesting. Yeah, in fact, I think this one a little more, like, less on the pretty houses and more
Yes.
on information, which I like.
Yes.
I took a lot of pictures because our friend was taking pictures, and I thought, oh yeah, I always forget to take pictures, and I'm going to take a
Yes.
few. So there's a cute, cool mural and some cool houses.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of really good art on this walk. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
On our next episode, we'll be rambling around St. John's.